Good afternoon. Welcome to today's CI Tools webinar. My name is Josh Osborne, the product manager for the CI Tools here at Central Innovation, and this is a weekly webinar covering the CI Tools. And this week we're going to be looking at the electrical tool again. So last week we had a look at the objects that are available, the different types of electrical plates and symbols and stuff. So that hopefully should have given you a good idea of what is in there and if it covers the things that you need it to. This week we're going to have a look at how to actually use the tool. So what kind of things we can use it for and how to actually do those things. Before we start, if you have any questions, just enter those in the chat panel in either YouTube or Vimeo, wherever you're watching this, and I will have a look at the end and see if I can answer any of those while we are live. If you think of anything afterwards, though, you can email it through to nz.support@centralinnovation.com, and that will come through to me. If you have any ideas that you'd like for things that you'd like to see covered in future webinars, you can email those through the same place, nz.support@centralinnovation.com. That would be great because I'm always on the lookout for topics to cover during these webinars. We are going to be working in ArchiCAD 28 today, but we're going to be just looking at sort of the standard functionality of the tool. So that will apply for going back a couple of versions in ArchiCAD. So if you're not up on 28 at the moment, everything that we're going to look at today will still be there for you, with the exception of the India and South Africa symbols and plates, which were added fairly recently in a update for ArchiCAD 28 only. So those won't be there if you're using an older version at this stage, but everything else that we're going to look at will be there. I think that's all of the housekeeping, so let's jump into the tool. So as I think I mentioned last time, if you don't have the electrical tool in your toolbox already, you can add that by just going to the options menu, work environment, apply profile, and choose the CI Tools profile. It'll be called that in this version. Obviously in 27 it'll be called CI Tools Profile 27 and that sort of thing. But that will automatically add it to your toolbox. You can add it manually as well if you like by editing the toolbox work environment. I won't go into how to do that because if you've got a custom work environment, you probably already know how to do it. But yeah, make sure that's in here, and then so long as you have loaded your libraries, then the electrical objects will be available. So as we saw last week, there are all of the localization folders are broken up into 4 subfolders. We've got switches, power points, jack points, and mixed modules. Now the mixed module, as you may remember, is a single object that allows you to place anything inside it. However, in most cases, you'll want to use the specific thing that you want to place. So common switches, for instance, we'll start with one of these because it's nice and straightforward. So we've got the AUNZ switch and the equivalents for the different localizations, but it's just a standard switch. You can see in my preview here, it has a wall plate with a single switch on it, and the floor plan view shows a single switch symbol, and 1200 here, which is representing the elevation of the wall plate. And we can modify what that says later as well. We'll see that soon. But for now, that's what we've got. So looking at the settings here, I'll just quickly brush over a handful of things and then we'll place one down and then we'll come back in and look at the settings in detail. But you can see we've got our ABCD here, which looking at the diagram here, you can probably intuit what most of these mean, but the A is the height of the plate, B is the width of the plate, C is the depth of the plate, and D is the elevation of the plate. So we can define how that plate looks here. Obviously, none of those settings change the way that the symbol looks, but they'll change the way that the plate looks. So we can set those up the way that we want, hit OK, and then go and place one of these down. So we can just click to place, and you'll see our symbol appears here. Now the electrical tool has the ability to snap to elements, walls specifically. So what we do is similar to several other tools in ArchiCAD, where you can use the magic wand tool to place them on an element in some way. The electrical tool lets us do that as well. So if I hold down the space bar and click down on the wall here, you'll see that it has placed itself snapped to the surface on the wall. And if I come over to one of these walls, it's vertical in our view, hold down the space bar and then click on that wall, you'll see it automatically rotates to the way around you would expect it to be for that wall and snaps to the wall itself. And the same up on the top as well. We can click there. So it makes it nice and easy to just get those plates positioned without you having to do a bunch of placing and rotating and that sort of thing. So we've got a couple of those placed down now. Let's go and have a look at what we have, what else we have in our settings here. I'll just select all of the ones we have there and we'll make these changes to all of them. So obviously we've got the size of the plate, which we looked at just before. Below the sizing, we have an option. It looks like 2 Lego bricks, but it's actually the option to switch between vertical and horizontal placement. So if I click this one, you'll see that it does that there. And what it's actually doing is it's just switching the A and B settings here. So it swaps the width for the height and back and forth. So you can easily toggle that without having to change those numbers manually. Then we've got the option to measure the height from. You can see in the diagram that we're measuring to the top. But if you choose a different, it will show you it here. So you can measure to the base instead, and that just means that the elevation view that we see on our symbol means that it is measuring to the base. Now, measuring to the top is what I think you'll be doing in most cases, though. We can also set an angle for this one. So it has in brackets here telling you that 0 degrees is floor mounted. So that's the angle it's talking about. It's not to have a plate that is diagonal across a wall. It is to have a plate that is not standing straight up and down, so mounted on a wall as such. So we can set this to 0 degrees if we want it to fall flat on its back and be mounted on the floor. Or if you, for some reason, have a different angled surface that you want to put it on, you can put it in the angle there and it will match that as well. But we'll go back to 90 because that's what it's going to be in 99% of cases. And then finally, in this column, we have the number of switches and the number of rows. So if I change the number of switches to 4, you'll see it will just plaster those all across the space that it has available. I can switch to horizontal mode and it rotates those with it as well. So that hasn't helped me. So what I actually want to do here is that it has placed everything in a single row. And the reason for that is the setting below this. So you can see number of rows maximum. The reason it is maximum is because you can set the number of rows to be higher than the amount of switches that you have. And it won't automatically add more switches for you. So it's the maximum amount of rows. So we've got 4 switches. Let's say that we want them in 2 rows. That will give us, that's 12 rows, sorry, 2 rows. That will give us a grid of 2 by 2 now, which is more what you would expect. If I set the number of rows to 3, it will not do anything because, again, as I said, it's the maximum number of rows, and so it's not going to give us a single row of 3 and then a single row of 1. That doesn't really make any sense. So it gives us what you see here. So yeah, so we can use this to do whatever we like. So if we go up to 8 here, you can see it's trying to work with the 3 that I gave it, but you might want to go to 4, or you might want to drop it down to 2. Whatever you need there. So you probably get the idea of how that's working there. And then, as I said, if I rotate these, the row setup rotates with it as well. So you can see that it's toggling between 4 and 2 because those are just the 2 multiples of 8 that we're dealing with here. And so when you rotate, your switches will follow that. Let's go back to a sensible number of switches on here, though. So let's go with 1 row of 2. We'll switch it back to a vertical format. Then over on the right, we have some additional options. So we can choose to have a blank plate. Obviously, it will just display with no switches on it. It doesn't change the fact that our symbol will still appear, but it just means the plate doesn't show anything. And we've got a neon option as well to add that there. We have settings for the actual switches here. So this pressing that button takes us to the switch control here, which we're about to look at anyway. So I'll just go back for now. We can choose if the model view options should be used to define how this shows, or if you want to override it. So the options are plate and modules, plate and module outlines, plate only, plate outline only or no 3D at all. So we can see that plate and modules is what we're looking at there. Plate only will show us just the plate. Plate outline only will do that, etc. It's not showing it in the preview, or we can turn off the 3D representation entirely. But we're going to go with model view options in this one, and then the attributes is what you would expect. It's just the surfaces for the plate and the switches, and what the pen you want to use is. And if we hit the all attributes button, it's going to take us to a different page, which is the attributes page, and we can set those there. Moving on to the switches, so this is where it took us before when we clicked that button. On the left side, we have options to define the layout. This is very similar to what was on the first page, just a little bit more detail. So we can define the number of switches and rows. And we've got custom and default layouts here, which just allow us to specifically set out. So if we do a custom layout rather than automatically fitting them on, we can tell it exactly where we want each switch to be positioned on the wall plate. In most cases, you probably don't want to do that, but the option is there if you need it. But we're going to go with default layout, in which case we just tell it how many switches we want it to have and what the spacing should be between them, and it will just figure out the rest. So you don't have to figure out how far in from each side it wants to be or anything like that. But yeah, the number of switches and number of rows does exactly the same thing as it did on the front page. And then over on the right, we've got individual switches, and that lets us define individual switches on our plate. So you can see we've got a drop down which shows 2 items at the moment because we have 2 switches. If I change this to 4 switches, the drop down will have 4 items in it. And what we can do is we can go through and change the individual switches to do different things if we want to. So we could say that switches 1 and 2 are normal, what we have already, but switch 3 is a 2-way switch, and switch 4 is a 3-pole switch, for instance. So you'll see those reflected in the names for those, and if I toggle over to my symbol view, you will see that we now are showing 3 one-way switches and 1 2-way switch showing on our view here. Actually, sorry, I think I got that the wrong way around. It's not 3 3 1 and 2 and 1 2. It is a 3 single pole and 1 3-pole is what it's showing us there. And obviously they don't have a model representation when we're just changing the ways or whatever that is called there. So that is unchanged. But yeah, we can control these. And when we get into some of the mixed modules later, this will allow us to change the way that it actually looks for the 3D view as well. Moving on to the next panel, we've got the symbol options. So that lets us choose how we want the symbol to show. So if I change the symbol view, you can see we are showing the model view option setting at the moment. If I go to plate symbol, it will break those out a little bit further. And if I go to module symbol, it will not collate them together. It will show them all separately. So we got, even though there's 3 the same, it shows them as separate items there. We can choose how they want, oh, that one's gone now. We can choose how they want to be arranged on that view as well. We can also choose if we want them to be showing 2-way. That's defined in the model view options, so it's grayed out for us as well. We can choose the spacing here. We can choose what the switch symbol should be. There's 2 options there, and also whether it should be round, square, or hexagonal. And also the size of this as well. And we can choose to show the arms if it is relevant or turn them off. So you can see those aren't shown there. Individual switches is the same as in the previous panel above, only we're looking at the symbol views this time. So we can choose what we want those to do. So use the default symbol or define a custom symbol. And we can also customize the text and a label on these as well if we want to as well. So we're looking at item number 3 at the moment. We'll use the default symbol, but we will label it with 2-way. And if we turn on the label view, that will show there. You can see it's plastered that on there, and the attributes for that label are defined here as well. You can also choose the text always readable option, which will do the thing that you normally have with labels where it will rotate so that it makes sense, regardless of what direction you're looking at it in your view. Then the label settings lets us define the full settings for those labels, so we can choose to use model view options or define them here. Obviously, at the moment, it was using just the elevation, but we can come in here and we can say actually we want it to show the current rating and then the code, for instance. We'll put that in. Actually, the code's not a good example because it's huge. Let's say the plate width for some reason. So we're showing that there. 73 is the width, 10 amp is the rating. We can put prefixes on. We can put something in the middle, and we can put a suffix on as well. And we'll add those there so that you can do plenty of different things using that. And then we can define how it works over here. So this is just setting the font and size and that sort of thing. Attributes we briefly saw before, but it's just controlling the attributes that are shown here. We actually have styles available here, so you can set up your own settings for these if you have something that's not the standard one that you would want to use in other electrical objects. You can just set up a style there and go save as style. Product data lets us set the sort of metadata for this element so that it knows additional information. So the manufacturer, cost, if you want to display that. The custom code, you can see at the moment it's showing the code, but it's grayed out. That's because the codes are automatically generated and they're specific to the layout that we have. So you can't modify that. You can't modify it yourself by default, but you can if you want to. So we can tick this box here and say, actually, I want to customize the code, and then you can set whatever you want in there. There's no reason to do this in most cases, but the reason you might want to do it is because the collation in the schedules is based on the code. Usually, that's what we recommend you use for the code. For the collation, sorry. And so if you have a switch that for some reason you want to be scheduled as if it were a type of switch that it isn't, you can modify the code here to be exactly what you want, so that it matches the others and is collated together with them there. So you can modify that. You can see what the code is on the ones you want it to copy, and then add that in here. And the same with the custom description. Again, it's built up based on what is here, but if you want the description to display something else, you can come in here and customize that as well. Normally, I wouldn't recommend modifying those yourself, but if you do have some need to do that, the option is there if you need to. Then we've got a note available, the voltage and the current rating, which are all just display for the display purposes only. It's not doing any calculation with those or anything like that. And then all parameters, just the full parameters list. So let's hit OK on that. It's going to make our fairly horrible looking things available now, but you can see those there. So we've got some odd labels and that sort of thing. And what we can do now is we can draw up a circuit. So the way that this circuitry works in this is that we can add wiring to a circuit made out of electrical elements, objects, and lamp elements. So they are a lamp type object, and it applies to any object at all. So obviously, in most cases, it will be something like a lamp, maybe that you've imported from somewhere else or something like that. But it will work on any. So what we can do is just go in. I usually grab the blender from here and just click to place one of those. Let's have two blenders in this actually. So we select all of the items that we want to include in our circuit. So I'll select the two blenders and these wall plates that we placed. We won't get the floating one there. We'll just go with these three. And then we go to CI Tools, Electrical, and choose to add wiring. And that gives us settings for the wiring, so we can choose if we want the pathing to be done automatically, manually, so that means you will set the pathing yourself. And if you want them to be angled, you can choose if you want the wires to be bent at all. Manual is also an option, but it's grayed out at the moment because we don't have it set to manual, but if we change that, it would. And you can see this number here just sort of indicates the amount of bending there will be applied to these. 800 is a pretty good value for this. You can manually modify the path after it's placed if you like. So I wouldn't worry about this number too much because you'll be able to make it do whatever you need to. What it's going to be placing down is just a spline, so you can manipulate it in any way that you do with a normal spline. And then we also have options to choose standard arc style curves or Bezier curves, in which case it'll put Bezier handles on both ends of each curve so that you can go through and really customize the exact angles that you want. In most cases for wiring, I don't think you will want that degree of control, but if you do want it, it is there. And then we can just set the settings for the actual line itself. So we can choose the line type and the pen. And we can come in here and we can choose to override that with anything else that we might want to use using a style. So if you preset up a bunch of these, you can use that there. The last setting chooses what layer it's going to place on, and then we just hit OK, and it will just draw up a wiring diagram for us. And what is handy about this is that it will maintain that diagram for us. So if I select part of the wiring diagram, you can see it's just a regular spline. We can come in here and we can modify this. So we could say that actually this one should come under here and this one should arc in the other direction, just so that it forms a bit more of a smooth line there. And then if we at some point choose to move any of the elements that are part of the schedule, the tool knows what to do with that. So we can move this blender up to here and the wiring will follow it. So the idea here is basically to have it so that you can essentially place the wiring and then forget about it and not have to mess around with it anymore after you've got it done. So just place that down and then you don't have to remember to update the wiring later if you move anything around, because it will do that for you. So we can move this plate across to floating in the middle of that door. Same with this plate, we can move that over to here. And you can see that the wiring follows it along. It is going to try and maintain as close to the previous curve that we have, but obviously it can only do so much with that, but it won't pop inside out or anything like that. So yeah, working with wiring is nice and easy. As I said, it is a pretty straightforward, just a spline, so you can do whatever you would with a normal spline. If you do want to modify the circuit after you've placed one, you can't modify an existing circuit to make it do something different as such. So to include a different item, for instance. So what we do in that case is we just delete the circuit and add a new one. So we can just go CI Tools, Electrical, and select circuit. That will select all of the circuit wiring, and we can just delete that and then rewire everything. So we could choose our two blenders and just this switch here maybe, and wire that one up. Add wiring, same settings as before, and now we've got that done, and we can do the same as before and remember the connection and that sort of thing. So that is placing the wiring diagrams and placing the element itself. The last thing I wanted to show you was creating a custom symbol as well. So obviously there may be cases where the symbols that are available don't do what you want. Maybe you have, I don't know, some sort of item that has a symbol that we don't have the library yet or something like that. In that case, you can email us and request that we add it at some point, but you can also just create your own as well. So let's just do that. I'll do it next to this one so that I can get the sizing right, but I'll grab my polyline tool and let's draw this new electrical symbol. So we'll go with this triangle here with a line like that. There we go. So there's our new symbol. We'll select that. We'll go File, Libraries and Objects, Save Selection as CI Electrical Symbol. You'll see that there. So it's Libraries and Objects, Save Selection as CI Electrical Symbol. Give it a name. Looks good. Hit save. And now if I go into the electrical element that we have, under where it says new use default symbol, we also have the option to use the new symbol that we created, and this will list any other custom symbols that you may have made as well. So you can build up a whole library of those if you need to as well. So we can go in here and say this one should be new symbol 1. This is only one of the switches, and you can see that is placed that there as well. So it's very quick and easy to do these. So you just draw those up using the polyline tool, save as CI electrical symbol, and away you go. All right. I am just going to quickly check and see if we have any questions before we finish up today. And remember, if you have any suggestions for future webinar topics, I would love to hear about that as well. Let's see where we'll go. Excuse me. All right. So yeah, as I mentioned, if you have any suggestions for future webinar topics, please send those through to nz.support@centralinnovation.com. And also, if you are using the ArchiCAD 29 technical preview, we have CA tools available for that now as well. So if you do want to get hold of those, just contact us on that same email address, and our support team can give you the details on how to get those loaded up. If you think of anything else that you wanted to ask and you forgot about it at the time, just send those through to the same address as well, and those will either get forwarded on to me, or the technical support person will help you there as well. But that's it from me for today. Yeah, looks like no questions. So thanks for your time, and I'll catch you at the next session.